Okay, so we'll call to order. We have a quorum, so we'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So may I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion, changes, additions, deletions? I think we can, we'll delete the, for this meeting with AB. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll move that to October, or excuse me, September's meeting. Okay, good. So, here they come. So all in favor of accepting the agenda? Any opposed? Okay.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Hello there.
I was complaining I got behind somebody doing 35 on
Right.
7, so just, yeah. So we're up to, I'd love a motion to approve the minutes of July 20th.
Moved.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
any changes?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hey, it's another unanimous. Public comment on agenda items.
Yeah, I have one. Can I, it's on 8A. I'd like to read a letter if that's possible.
Of course.
Sure. Thank you very much. You want to do it now or you want me to wait till 8A?
Well, we have 2 other letters that relate to 8A as well under correspondence. So
Okay,
if you could do it under correspondence, how's that?
that's fine. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, good. All right, so you all got the email
Second.
that Scott had sent.
In the future, should I copy everybody on that? I didn't mean
Yes.
to make it more difficult, but I figured sending you was the more appropriate.
That's fine, that's perfectly fine. And then the letter from Marco Balasone, he had actually sent it prior to the last board meeting. And I was having email problems, as you recall, and I didn't get it because
Right.
it wasn't.
Sitting
coming
somewhere
through.
in outer space.
Yeah, it was out in the ether. So I did want to include that too, for this. So, and Jim, you got them both, I understand.
Pardon?
Got both of the pieces of correspondence.
Yes, right.
And around this morning.
Yeah, so, well, actually, last.
I'm sorry, last night. Excuse me.
And so, do you want to read your letter, John?
Oh, sure. No problem. I'll hand you out some copies so you guys have it.
Oh, great,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
I think I got that for everybody. Sure. My gift for it. It's good to have
Pardon me?
a position.
Yeah, a minute. All right, John, do you want to come over here so people can hear you and you're on the recording?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You're welcome. You want me to pull a chair up for you?
No, I have to stand because if I sit, it's just gonna
Sure.
kill my nose.
Thank you.
Just let me know if everybody's got a copy.
Okay.
Give it to Scott.
everyone's welcome to copy. Can you pass a copy to Jane,
Yeah.
please?
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello there. I've got one more.
Yeah,
Anybody else need one? Yes, thank you.
Okay, tonight, I am here tonight as a parent, a grandparent, as a taxpayer. I'm not as a representative for speaking on behalf of any groups, boards, commissions, and committees. March 13th, 1996, one of the very first mass shootings happened in a small town similar to ours in Dunblane, Scotland, at the primary school, which included students such as Andy Murray, who was in 3rd grade at the time, later to become a tennis star, and his brother in 2nd grade. Their lives and others were about to be changed forever. Teacher Gwen Major walked her class of 31 students, kindergarten's age to the gymnasium, at about 9:30 a.m. for class. An individual got inside the gym carrying guns and began shooting at the students and teacher. Within 5 to 7 minutes, 18 were dead, 1 teacher, 16 students, 1 perpetrator, and 15 other students were injured severely. It should be noted again, the time that it took for all this to happen is only 5 to 7 minutes. This is an important fact since other events have happened within that time. Some might believe that this would never happen here, and so did the residents of Dunwoody Scout. Having an SRO in our schools would be a great preventative measure against this form of happening. We must not put a price on this, as protection of our schools are priority number one from my point of view. Again, you can't put a price on this. I urge the board to do the right thing and to fund the SRO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Okay. So, do you have any report, or we just wait until we get to?
No, we'll just wait out on the slides.
Okay.
Comments.
Okay, great. And Deb, we received your report. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, that's it, just we're collected about 50% of our money, so we started.
Anyone have questions for Deb?
No, thank you.
Yes, no? Okay. All right, now, Board of Selectmen.
Mostly streetscape, and more streetscape.
Yes, it's quite evident. It's dominating.
Had you not noticed, the streetscape project has begun in earnest. They're moving very nicely along. Their plan, as was from the contract signing, was to start on Bridge Street where, and take advantage of school being out, so there's fewer walkers from Penn School and Penn Center School. So they're pretty much done with that southern-ish side of Bridge Street. They have now two teams. They have a demo team and a finish team. So the demo team that was on Bridge Street moved up to the north end, across from the Congregational Church, and they're going to continue to the train tracks doing the demo while the finish team finishes that south side of Bridge Street. Once they're done, the finish team is done with the south side of Bridge Street. The finish team will move up to that northern end. The demo team will move down to the northern side of Bridge Street and start the demo. So they have this two-team sort of battle rhythm that they've created. And they're anticipating, as Warren told me the other day, to be finished with this phase one before any snow. So they are 5 days a week, full time.
And phase one is defined as?
Bridge Street and North Main.
Oh, so it's just geography. It's not
Correct.
level of completion.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That has to do with the funding sources,
Gotcha.
as I recall.
That's-
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So they're
And are there any financial surprises so far?
so one of the financial surprises, which was right at the very beginning, 2 days after they signed the contract, when it became apparent that there was no granite in New England. The normal companies that Mather works with, they were like not even taking orders for the rest of the year. So they had to shift and find a source as close by as possible, which the closest was North Carolina.
Yeah.
So that's where the granite is being transported from. So you can imagine
Right.
there's
So the transport costs.
Yeah. so I think it's about a $60,000 increase. So that, we move forward with that, and you can see John Casey is letting them use that area back by the old Zappa Gallery for staging and equipment, which is really handy so that they don't have to go far to get it, because everything,
Right.
is time and money. So that was one hiccup along the way.
Before we move off that one. Sure. So is there a contingency in the project that covers that $60,000?
No, I believe that was a change order.
Was,
Ah.
The check
So-
for them.
and so the Board of Selectmen approved that.
I don't know, did we have the board?
I believe you did, but I'd have to look back.
Yeah, I'd have.
I think you have to. You think that's-
You're right. We did.
Yeah.
It's been like a freight train.
So there's no contingency in the project?
I'm sure there is. I'd have to honestly go back and. look at
Okay,
the
yeah, maybe
contract
for the
and
next
see.
meeting, just to
We
kind of
can
see
go
where
forward.
we're going to come in for a landing, yeah.
So that was one change order. The streetscape committee met last Friday because they had some concerns
Oh,
about.
by the way, just one other thing on the change order. So the contractor is considering it a change order? And the only reason being, you know, if it was sourcing the material, and if they're charging you at a rate higher because it's a change order than normal construction would be, that might be something to have a discussion with them about. Right? You know, because usually a change order is what, a 50% premium. And if it's not a change order because you changed something, but it's because I think, I just flagged that for you to make sure, because you make a little savings.
And we also have along the whole way, we still have SLR as the design engineer. They're completely engaged with us from that perspective
Right.
on everything. So they're always sort of advising us as we go along. So when they were putting in the granite curbing on Bridge Street, a couple of streetscape committee members had concern about the install of the granite curbing, the way that it was spec'd out to be installed into the base, and how the concrete was going in. So they had a meeting on Friday. The SLR design engineer was here. They made a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they change the spec so that it's encased, if you will. Basically, the whole bottom is encased in concrete. Mike Doherty, who's the design engineer, made it clear that this is the state DOT spec and everything has to be done to the state DOT spec. So we would actually have to go back to DOT to find out if this meets the spec. And we got an email earlier today from his conversation with DOT that it actually doesn't meet the spec and they're not authorizing us to change the spec. So it'll come up at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday night, but I don't think we'll be making a motion to, we can't change it if it doesn't meet the specification for the DOT. So that's
Just
just,
a little cost avoidance.
so that's, just a wrinkle along the way, but this is a big job, so we're gonna have, things that come up along the way. But we're putting together things are just moving along quickly. My plan is tonight or tomorrow morning to get out an update to the towns. The chamber is also engaging with us so that they can be a liaison directly to the businesses, so they can really get them some good detailed information as the project goes on. But I go see the foreman pretty much every morning. Rick is in contact with him regularly. Foreman is a local person, so he knows sort of the lay of the land. He knows a lot of folks in town. He's been doing a great job being flexible as far as like working with Guy Morey, who owns the bike shop over on Bridge Street, and they had a long conversation of this is how the project is going to work, and just asking him like what are your access needs when you get to this point, and they talked about that, and they flexed to make sure that there's always access to businesses. And so they're doing that as they go along, each business owner, each.
And you don't, or it's what you're planning for, but is there any business interruption you expect to come out of this, depending on where they are on the street?
We have made it very clear from the very get-go that is, obviously safety in the project
Sure.
is priority one, and access to the businesses. And they're like, we do this all the time. We get that how important it is, and they designed the project to stay out of that nexus of the town until after Labor Day. So, and they shut down, they came in quick and did all the curb cuts that Monday, Tuesday. They were actually done.
For the sale days, yeah.
I made it very clear to them that they would be out, not doing anything that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So they've been great as far as communicating and just being very rounded and thorough in their connection with the people who live in town, as they're going along. So plan is to get out weekly updates. for
Good.
everybody.
Good. What else you got for us?
That's
Did you talk about the inspector cost? Did you explain that?
What was last one? Yeah, I think that was last one. The inspector from SLR, we initially wanted to hire a clerk of the works, but we
Right.
got
Right.
no bites on that, so we
Right.
switched over some assistance from Barbara. We switched over to a construction inspectors.
Engineering, construction. and
Mhm.
So it's a
Who did you
certified-
hire?
It was an extension of the SLR contract.
Oh, okay.
And so they have, there's an inspector out
Yeah, you
there
did
every
talk
day.
about that last meeting, yeah. I have a question. Is the new cell tower functioning yet?
Not yet.
Okay, well, it's still summer. They said summer, so
Right.
we'll see.
I heard the array, I know the array was on site, which is the thing that all the antennas get mounted on. I haven't. been
Yeah, I saw it,
over
was it
there.
today? So I did see that they have one on it now,
Mhm. All right,
for better or for worse, right?
right.
So I'm not seeing anywhere in this bid form where there's a contingency dollar amount.
Okay, wow.
I mean, it's not easy to read just because of the way it's.
Well, maybe for the next
Yeah.
meeting, we might, have an update on that issue in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And Barbara, do you have any type of report you want to share tonight?
I'll just give you an ARPA update. So far to date, I've released 9 grant checks totaling $53,500. And I'm still trying to work through the pile that I have of those. I got quite a few applications, which is great. And I did leave on the table a sort of a summarized profit and loss overview
Oh,
of last year.
Thank you. Well, I think there's copies for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. Two-sided, and I did
Yeah, this-
take the liberty of already including the deduct of the 143 to the Board of Ed, so that you can see what the surplus is going to be. And it's going to be 296, 122. And that might change the teensy weensy bit because the auditors always do some fancy thing with the tax collection in
Mhm.
60 days and
Mhm.
all that happiness, but
You have
it's going
to
to be
tweak
in that
something.
neighborhood, 296.
So that's it?
But that's all I have so far.
Okay. all right.
Nancy,
Yeah.
I had a couple quick questions for Jean.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, I apologize.
That's okay. As a sufferer of Zoom and being at these meetings, I'm looking for maybe an update quickly on the new audiovisual system.
Sure, so we have, it's sort of 2 levels. We need to have an electrician come in. All the equipment, from what we understand, has been delivered to the IT vendor. So now we're waiting for the electrician. They have to come in and run some drops and put in the, do the basic electrical work. And I think that's planned for next week.
Oh, thank you. And quick update on the EV charging system repair.
So it's gonna have to be a new unit and, I'm hoping that we can find some grant money. There's a ton of grant money out there. I just got something today that I forwarded to Barbara. It's a lot of it is that IIJA money that the state had to submit a plan for their money because it's passed through. And that had to be submitted, I think, by August 15th. And so now we're just starting to see the state coming down and saying, okay, we have this funding available. Plus we have the federal highway designation, recent designation as an EV corridor, and we're waiting for that funding so that we can replace that. It's not repairable. They don't actually use that level charger. I think it's I'm pretty sure it's a level 1. Everything is the level 2, and I forget what the other one is called. So it's just sort of waiting for the funding opportunities.
And did we on that front, did we budget anything for that? So this is all either found money or there may be some small additional expense.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can pull together. Also there's Eversource funding for EV chargers.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we'll be able to patch together the different grant buckets to put a number of them in town. And planning and zoning is looking at a regulation change to sort of simplify the process for EV charger installation. Like Kent School, I believe, is They're interested in putting in a bank of EV chargers currently.
What does one cost? Do you have any idea?
It depends.
Well, of course, it
Um,
depends on how far it is from electric and such.
Right,
but
so
as far
there's-
as the unit itself,
Yeah, so there's the electricity piece, there's the,
right, but just the unit I'm talking
really what I've seen anywhere from 8 to 25,000,
Okay.
depending
Alright.
on. But there's also the connectivity piece
Mhm.
that you want, so you're, replacing that revenue, charging customers for the charge.
Okay.
Gene,
And
has the chamber indicated any interest in supporting this?
I haven't really had like a specific conversation. I do push them the different funding opportunities. I'm gonna be meeting with David tomorrow, so I'll have that. I'll remember to mention this to him. I think
Thank you.
it would be a great thing for the chamber to, pull together
Right.
multiple locations around town. And I share it with the folks who own the gas station, because that would be an obvious place to make room. So.
Thank you.
lots of different.
That's all, Jim?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the review of the Board of Ed Resource Officer proposal. And Barbara, did you want to speak about that at all?
Other than I had a discussion with the Board of Ed about taking the surplus from this year's budget and utilizing it to fund the first year of the resource officer.
If it passes a vote.
Yeah, I mean, it has to go to town meeting.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't have to, no, but I mean, we don't intend to
Oh, the
use,
funding piece doesn't have to go to
Right.
town meeting.
right,
Sure.
yeah, and we're not looking to secure the funding so that we can pay for one if it fails at the town vote or anything like that.
Mhm.
It's just a bookkeeping
Mhm.
thing, just in case it passes.
Well, if it doesn't pass, what is your intention to do with the non-lapsing fund?
I suppose we could just
It'll go
return
back
it,
to the
right?
general.
Yeah, I think it has to be, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it has to be specifically designated, right? So if we could designate it for a security officer,
Mhm.
or, security guard or whatever at the school, and then if that doesn't come through, then we send it back.
So a security guard might be acceptable to the Board of Ed instead of a trooper, is that
Well, I
depending on
can't,
who you can get?
the vote for the town would be for a second stage.
Of course, of
And
course.
then, depending on how that vote goes, if that gets voted down, I can't, speak for the Board of Ed. I think that would be something that could be potentially considered, but
Mhm.
I'm really not sure the appetite on the board for that, and I'm not sure they would. I mean, I certainly, John's on the board also, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else on the board. I imagine
Did you do,
the,
I just can't remember in your, not in your post, but did you evaluate the difference between two security guards versus one state trooper and what?
two security guards?
Well, I'm just saying, in term, well, we're not gonna pay a security guard, $167,000.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't have to spend the whole.
Right, but my question is, did you lay that out? And the question, so here's, because what's gonna happen, you're gonna have a town meeting, this is gonna come up. I guarantee you, someone's gonna ask this question,
Oh,
right, which is,
yeah.
this is a big budget. There's, if you have resistance to this idea, you may get, frankly, taxpayers who say, geez, $167,000 is an awful lot of money. Why don't you hire a security? What's your answer?
Well, yeah, we did compare the differences and going through the difference between what's called an SSO, which is
Right.
a security guard, and an SRO. The board felt strongly, I mean, it was unanimous that the SRO was the better option, also because it's a slightly different proposal than just hiring a security.
Right, I
guard.
understand.
So
I'm just
it's-
saying that if this comes up in a town meeting, however,
Well,
the
at the
residents
town,
aren't gonna know that. They're gonna ask. This is a
We're gonna-
lot of money.
we're gonna have an information session where we present, our information with a, PowerPoint, and then it'll go to a vote the week after, so. I mean, I can't speak for the board and say, we're gonna be considering this or that. What we're considering now is the second stage trooper. That's what we would like to
And if
request.
the town votes it down, what happens to the board? come back with a new proposal, or do you just
That's what I'm saying.
pull the plug?
I can't make that statement, you know, I
Sure you
can't.
can.
No, I
It's,
can't.
in terms of
Let me go
process.
back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't-
he can't speak, he
It would
can't
have,
speak.
it would be another discussion, a board meeting, but I could not say this is what would happen. One, because I don't know, but two, it wouldn't be appropriate to speak for other people. I mean, I'm just one vote on the board, just like
But I wasn't saying what do you do, I was saying what's the process?
it would be up to the board. I mean, it would go back to the board. Here's a hypothetical. This is why I can't answer, you know. If it was, you know, a low turnout, very close vote, voted down, the board may have one opinion of what happened, what they would like to do about that. If it was very high turnout and overwhelmingly voted down, I'm sure that would be a different conversation afterwards, you know, so. What we're focused on right now is the second state trooper. We believe that's the best proposal. And not only because it's for the school, but for the town in the summer. And we're gonna present that. We did compare the differences and we'll show those comparisons like we did, we're gonna try to do the last meeting here. And we'll go from there, we'll see what the vote is.
So another question for you. So did you consider, because of course, a trooper is a trooper is a trooper. So whether it's John or Harry or Sam, you know, you've got the coverage. Did you consider that when looking, instead of hiring a retired, say, police officer, looking at the cost of going through a company that provides security to cover the school? Because that probably wouldn't have the cost of all the equipment that comes with the state trooper, like the car and all the,
Hiring a security officer would be cheaper. I think we went through this,
no,
last
not
month.
hiring a security officer.
She's saying contracting
hiring
with.
a security company that
The
can
only-
also send a John or a Bob or a Joe.
Or Susan.
Yeah. I knew somebody chimed in. I was thinking,
The only people that are allowed to carry guns are hired from
I see.
So.
And there are security companies that hire retired
Right,
police
police
officers.
officers, yes.
So, I mean, that would be, if we got to that point where we were considering something like that, yeah, we would, you know, flesh that out more.
Because then you would have assured
Yeah.
coverage,
Yeah,
where if
that
the
would be-
individual you hired was ill,
Sure, that's a real option. That's a good.
I don't
point, that
know.
we would- Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we were comparing a security company that could provide us with a retired officer and a second state trooper, we still are, you know, prefer the state trooper route. We think that's the best route. So that's what we would like to focus on.
Mhm.
But again, I'm sorry, you go.
No, I was just gonna say, so with the town vote, there's no option. It is gonna be state trooper
Yeah.
or not. So that's
Referendum question.
exactly. So then if that gets voted down, either the drawing board and come back
Or not.
or not.
Yeah.
Jason, you had something else you want?
Well, no, that's why, you know, I mean, I would have rather, we kind of laid those out for. That's what the point I was making in the last
Right,
meeting, in
right.
terms of how exhaustive,
Yes.
frankly, the analysis, you know, would be before you present it to the town.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, but I lost it.
Mhm. And I assume that you have the updated safety plan and it's practiced with Fidelity on a monthly basis at the very
Yes.
least. Yeah, okay. Jim, did you have any comments?
No,
or
I was just
questions?
rubbing my forehead.
So, John, I think that you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that we have the money there, correct? Barbara?
We'll have the money where?
In that account, 140.
It's not in the
No.
account yet, no.
Not in the account.
They need
Not
to
unless
take
they-
action.
We have the capacity.
Okay, so you have the capacity, so I say go forward with it, because, I mean, you can't put a price on life.
Well, except for, well, that's something for the town meeting. The question is, are you putting a price on life with this, or are you basically covering your butt? By saying we've got, you know,
Right.
we've done all we could, as
I
opposed
find
to,
that,
well, I know, but I'm quite willing to be the,
and I think the main point here is we're taking into account, so it's not gonna be decided by board of finance, it's not gonna be decided by you. We're gonna present, everybody's gonna get a say, and we'll see what the votes.
Most,
think it's-
most of the killings happen within 15 minutes. You can't get a state trooper down in 15 minutes.
No, you can't.
You can't. So you gotta have somebody that's on board right away. And I think to have the state trooper here would be the best.
Yeah.
He knows, so a lot of these state troopers know the people, they know the kids. I mean, it's perfect fit.
Mhm.
I mean, and we can find funding the following year, maybe find funding, somewhere else.
So that's the thing, because if we, if the town does decide to follow this route, that, if it's $180,000 this year, I can assure you it's gonna be close to
No.
200,000.
Well, and you can
next year.
present value that out, and, frankly, you're talking $3 to $4 million per the value for this town. And again, and all of which frankly is because we have not, societally dealt with gun, with assault.
Right, and we have no control.
I know, but I'm just saying that is the burden we bear,
You know, and there's
Yes,
a lot of towns, a lot of towns follow it, never see that happen.
Yeah,
Just to be clear,
Yeah, just be that.
the 187 is the base contract price.
Right.
The 200 is with the expected overtime. Gene's tracking down some details about, the dollar amount, but for this year.
I understand that.
150 or whatever, that's a prorated amount.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is the cost to the taxpayers of Kent
Yeah.
will be the 180,000. And next
Next
year
year.
it will go up because the cost of all these things goes up. They're union shop,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Contract, there'll be a couple percentage points on.
Well, and also when you lay this out over every town, et
Gina, I'll be
cetera.
with you in just a second.
And you also lay this out, I mean, this is a societal problem, frankly, that we have, which is, there's gonna be competition because every town is looking at this issue, and if they all come up with this is whatever, talk about pricing again, that's all gonna contribute to how expensive it's gonna
Demand,
It's also a
supply.
mental health issue. It's very,
yeah,
it's very important to understand. It's mental
Yep.
health.
be. I understand,
yeah, for staff and students and parents, yeah.
on both ends, by the way,
Yeah.
because there are also those ones who don't want somebody with a gun in
Yeah.
the school to start with, so I think
Yes.
you gotta look at
That's true.
both sides.
There's some of us that feel strongly about
Mhm.
that.
Can I just to that point, I know you at the last meeting, you ended it with, you don't believe guns belong in schools. Neither do we. I mean, we're trying to prevent people from bringing a gun into school. We're asking. for
I
a
agree.
cop. We're not
Right, but
looking
should,
to arm teachers. or,
Right.
you know,
but then are there other ways to better
Right.
secure that school?
Bulletproof glass, but that's.
Or, are the,
Or even where do you, where do
I
you
mean, I've just got an example. So somebody props the door open to the playground. It's real easy for somebody to come in.
Yeah.
Do
but they
you
don't
have
that.
card reader systems, or
Yeah.
are people disciplined for propping doors open? Those are all internal
Yeah,
matters
that
and not
is-
to be just a big
right.
public discussion. I'm just throwing out.
And then that doesn't happen. That sort of lapse,
Mhm. So, I mean, because that's,
but that's not foolproof,
no, but it's. a
Well,
common
neither is
issue.
having a
Right.
trooper.
No, it's not, what is that? And a locked door isn't gonna stop, somebody from getting in the way. It's not.
A sick person, whether it's a
Right.
gun,
You got it.
a bow and arrow, a knife,
Well, it
whatever.
would stop somebody with a bow and arrow, but it's not gonna
Well,
stop somebody with. an
Well, again, and even
Like
maybe
as far
then,
as
it all
hurting
depends
people.
on
Yeah.
the
No,
moment in
I'm talking
time.
about, we have our security,
Mhm.
but it's not,
But the issue of this committee, one more time, is I still think it is value for money, which is the taxpayers are going to know at the end of the day. This is a big budget item,
Mhm.
and do we think it is money well spent? That's what the taxpayers are gonna ask.
that's why
Yeah.
we're gonna ask.
Yeah.
What people.
So Jean, you wanted to,
So just a couple of brief follow-ups from the last meeting. I did have a number of conversations with the supervisor who supervises all of the resident state troopers for Troop L. And he gave me a lot of great details that we're gonna roll up into a PowerPoint that will be shared with the public at the meeting. We'll, walk through that step by step. They, one of the ways that he described what the added value is for a resident, for a state trooper versus for an SRO versus an SSO. So if you have an unarmed security officer, or even if you have an armed security officer, they still at the end of the day have to call 911. They're not connected. We're basically part of the biggest police department in the entire state. And in contracting with the state police, with DESP, that's how we are part of that very large, very heavy resource police department. So the response that we would get if with an SRO, they are directly connected to 911. They are part of the all of the planning processes that the state police deploys when there's a, an active shooter or an active, active violence incident. With an SSO, they're not part of the police department. So our police department is DEPS, is Connecticut State Police. And so they would be literally having to call 911, go through the dispatch center, get sent over to the troop. So there would be this process that just like if you call 911, if I call 911, they would be calling 911 the exact same way.
Well, right now, that, that maybe.
If an SSO. if it
But,
was an
but, but,
SSO.
well, also, and that's assuming that there are no steps taken or strategy agreed to with the state, et cetera, that circumstance.
They're not gonna do that. You're either in the state
I just-
police or
yeah,
you're not in the
and
state
I-
police. It's a very.
And I beg to differ. Okay,
You can differ all you want, but I know.
You can't say that
this-
without
Well,
Right, and I
the
know the
evidence is,
statutes.
yeah.
I know that, I had an hour-long conversation with the lieutenant today. It's not a, like, oh yeah, for you guys, we'll do it, we.
Well, no,
can.
but if you have an SSO instead, who has basically, if you technologically equip him to be able to get to our state trooper who can then make the call.
It's not even here.
They're not,
It's
and they're not on
allowed.
the same radio
Right.
system. They can't be on the same radio
That's
system
not allowed.
because the
Right.
state police radio system is a
Right.
closed system.
Yeah.
So the big advantage, the big piece for us as a community is the turnkey contract. We have to do nothing other than negotiate the contract, sign the contract. They do all the scheduling for us. So you think about all the stuff that they do and to have a trooper show up every day. So if Andrew's sick and it's one of his 5 days on, we still get a trooper on that day. If we go with an SSO, we're now having to patch our own police department together. We don't have the resources in town hall to patch together a police department, let alone make sure that let's say we wanted it to be an armed person. So that person has to have a weapon. They have to have a backup weapon, because you have to have a backup weapon. So now the town hall is responsible for securing 2 weapons in this building somewhere. We have to make sure that person is trained. So they're not trained like the rest of the state police are. They're trained, they're a policeman. Right. If they're trained in another state as a policeman, it's not necessarily going to be the same training.
I have a sneaking
So there's-
suspicion that Blackwater will be offering this service very soon. And that's,
So there
Yeah.
are a lot of infrastructure pieces to having an SSO. We would have to create an entire policy and procedure manual for this employee that they would have to, have live and breathe by and have
Which,
performance.
it's doable if
evaluation.
that, but it doesn't seem as efficient or as powerful. And I think one of the points that you keep missing is that the whole point of this idea is that we're trying to make it valuable to the whole town and not just Kent Center. So if we did go with an SSO and there were, God forbid, a shooting at the nursery school right there, he or she couldn't respond to that call. With an SRO, if there's an emergency at the IGA, at the gas station, at the nursery school, it's another police officer that can respond in town, always here, Monday through Friday. So that extra, for Kent School, it reduces response times for almost everywhere in town, on a regular basis. Obviously, if Andrew's sitting, happens to be sitting in front of somewhere, he might have a quicker response time, but you know what I'm
Jason?
saying. It guarantees a quicker response time. And I'm sorry, Jim, just one more.
I'm just chiming in to say that I disagree. I think we need the top level of professionalism to protect our kids. And that's the Connecticut State Police.
Right. And the SSO, what some people refer to as a constable, is often used in other school districts and exclusively, as far as we've been able to find, under an SRO. So they hire an SRO first, and for some of these districts that have multiple buildings, then they'll hire a couple of constables or SSOs to work directly with that SRO. But as the main person, it's not as good. it's not as,
And there are towns in the area that are going away from that constable, that SSO, and they're going to SRO concept all around us.
So
The other piece, and I just lost track of where I was going. So from a funding standpoint, we got a letter from DESC just a couple of days ago advising us that the fringe for the resident trooper program, so it's fringe and workers' comp, it actually, it has gone down 27.31% from the previous fiscal year. And they anticipate that it's going to continue to stay at that level. So the fringe, which for state employees is huge. So for the state trooper, the fringe is 49.74% of their salary. And that's standard state fringe. So the fact that that's gone down so much.
But that's not all, I mean, the other part of fringe is taxes and, insurance, health insurance, life insurance, all
Sure.
those things too. So,
But overall,
I
there
mean,
was,
workers' comp is not a big nut typically.
no, but it's fringe and work.
Yeah,
The whole package
that-
that has gone down 27%.
that's very interesting.
And we're also in a I think it's a 3-year contract. So the contract that we have goes from 21, July 1, 21 to June 30, 23. So we're in that contract, 2 years.
So I have a question.
I'd
Oh,
like
I'm
to-
sorry,
no,
Kathy, go ahead.
Just when all this was talking about, Scott, if there's an SRO that's a state trooper at the school and there was another emergency in the state, would that trooper be pulled
in the state.
or someplace?
Or in the area.
In the
Next
area.
door.
It depends
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
incident.
I can't
And
imagine.
that lieutenant and I had a conversation about it. It really depends.
So he
Because-
could be pulled.
Yeah, because
Okay.
they have, but the priority, because the town, or the town is paying, so the priority is for the contracted town.
Yeah, I would
So
think
they
that
would
would be
be-
a massive emergency, like.
So one of the scenarios he laid out was, let's say there's a, multi-vehicle car accident in Washington. They would, and they needed, the response. So that trooper they may not,
Okay.
but they may go over there. But what happens is the supervisor that always is at one of those, it's usually a sergeant that is going to be at one of those scenes. They know that they have an SRO that has responded because they needed that response. They prioritize how they push out the personnel again. So they know they're going to get that trooper back out, whether they have to do a call-in, an overtime, whatever they have to do. They know that that's a contracted person for here. So their priority is to get that person back over here.
We don't have any numbers on how often Andrew pulled out of town for something like that.
No.
I gotta imagine that's fairly rare. I would think within town, it may be once or twice a year. But Lisa was told the same thing, that they are prioritized to be the first to leave the school back to the school because they understand that we're paying them for an SRO.
And just from a general standpoint, when I was talking to the lieutenant today, so annually, Andrew, and this is a rough number, annually, he responds to, and so these are calls for service, responds to about 2,000 calls for service as the resident state
In Kent.
trooper. I'm
We
not
don't
sure
know.
if they're all in
Yeah,
Kent,
so that would go to Fran's question.
Yeah.
but because he's spending, 40 hours a week here,
Mhm.
I would imagine it's most of his time. He does do overtime shifts on the patrol one or, at the troop, if they get, a call in, when the supervisor does call in troopers if they need overtime, so there is some overtime.
So question, and so just to verify and clarify, so when you pay for a resident state trooper, is it coverage with somebody in the town of Kent 365 days a year? Or only the equivalent of 40 hours a week.
Right, so the contract is not for 365-day a year coverage. It's
Okay.
for the scheduled. of
Okay,
Which, that's what the program is, so it could be, there are different shifts, but
Mhm.
ours is 5, the current, most of the state trooper is 5 on, 3 off. So it's, however many
yeah,
hours are in that, and that's
Okay.
all, as you know, part of the collective bargaining agreement. and
right.
They have overtime that they can do, whether it's in Kent or on the patrol one or at the desk or special assignments, they might.
So then the trooper would be on site 186 school days per year. And then the days during spring vacation that,
Right, so,
or summer vacation, I beg your pardon, with the town.
yeah,
Okay.
so thinking about it in terms of it's a full-time.
Right, I understand that. I was just
Trooper,
clarifying,
Mhm.
how much time where and the
Yeah,
actual
and
So,
just
coverage.
So
Yeah.
another, sorry for interrupting, but another piece that he shared was that that has come up a number of times, if there were a snow day
Mhm.
and it was one of the RSO's days on, they would still come here, they would be available they would, revert over to the second resident state trooper. And if you ask Andrew what he does on days where there's a lot of snow, he is constantly in constant response mode,
Mhm.
going from car accident to car accident to car accident to car accident,
Right.
all day long. So
Right.
having that second person,
And that day has to be made up at school anyway, so
Mhm.
the 186 would happen.
And
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize
Sure.
that part about being here in the summer was not, what do we do with him in the summer? Oh, that was part of the plan. That's why we
No, I
chose-
understood that, yeah.
That's why we chose this one over the security officer. We're trying to solve 2 problems potentially
Mhm.
with one.
Although I might add, it's not the school board's job to figure out for
Well,
the town what, the
I'm
school
not
board.
figuring out, we're collaborating. We
He's-
talked to
he's
the board of
marketing.
select.
Yeah, thank you.
And collaborating, yeah.
I am not marketing. I don't know why you say that. It was a collaboration. We recognized there was
It's a good point.
what?
It's something, it would be a dual benefit.
Yeah.
It's a
it
good
is.
point.
That's what I just want
It's
to
a good point to say,
emphasize.
yeah.
On behalf of the taxpayer though, again, if we weren't doing the school
I
thing, we
understand,
wouldn't be,
you're not-
so I'm just trying to be transparent for the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Okay,
But the other thing is too, go ahead, but the other thing too is there's grants out there. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as we get the funding for the first grant.
No, I just want to caution with that, because we will be working like the Dickens to try to find grant funding for the, next budget season or the one after that, but I would rather it be considered as the full cost, as if we were not able to find any grant funding, because it's possible that we won't be able to, I don't want people to think, yeah, this is great if you can find half of it covered in grant money, and we'll work as hard as we can to do that, but I would prefer if everybody considered it as if we were not going to do it.
I don't think it's the sort of thing you could start and then say, oh, well, we don't have money this year, so we're not gonna do it. I mean, once it's done, I think
No,
it's
that's not what
done.
I mean. I just mean
Yeah.
that, and I talked with Barbara about this, and I think Jean also, that the resolution is gonna have the prorated amount in it, but I think we agreed that we can include an explanatory paragraph underneath listing the full year amount, what we're actually signing up for if we do this year after year.
Mhm.
And that's the number I think that should be considered, not expecting,
With inflation,
yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
mean, people
one other-
would understand that.
one other question, I just around the sources of funds. Jean, have we talked to our senators and our member of Congress yet about this, which is when you, again, getting back to this $200,000 nut that every single town in Connecticut is at minimum gonna be taking on, all because the United States Congress hasn't dealt with solid, weapons. Should our congressmen be going to Congress saying this ought to be funded at the federal level?
it'll sure be part of my messaging to Senator Blumenthal
Mhm.
tomorrow when I see him.
Really, I mean, this is all because,
Mhm.
again, I was talking to somebody in New Haven about saying, this is the price we are all paying for the fact that Congress hasn't dealt with something that 80% of Americans want dealt with. and it's costing us $200,000 a year. Because in every other town. And if it's that uniform, it obviously is an expenditure that is societal, not limited to our town or another, and it frankly should be something that the federal government deals with as opposed to every town having. So, for what it's worth.
A question following on what Scott was talking about, and Barbara, you can help me with this in terms of, we're looking at this money. How is that gonna impact us as a Board of Finance of other requests from other, I mean, where's this, how are we gonna handle all of this? Okay,
Because the non-lapsing fund was part of the monies that we did draw from to keep the tax rate the
No.
same.
No,
Wasn't that anticipated as coming in, some of the money's coming in?
You drew from the undesignated general fund. The
Mhm.
non-lapsing fund is a special fund.
I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about the undesignated fund. So if it was
That's
not
come from-
designated as
Right.
going into the 2% non-lapsing fund, it would have gone into the undesignated
It would
fund.
have, yes.
So in essence,
we're shorting that area.
exactly.
Was that 190 considered as being something to be part of the general fund for this coming year?
The 296 that I just talked about includes the 143 deduct.
Right. That
So
you,
includes it.
yeah, right, right.
So we would take that out of that.
So
I mean,
close to
theoretically,
400.
yeah.
If you
Yeah.
took it
I
out.
would not have
It's
them
already
in,
out.
right?
It's already taken
It's already out.
out. Yeah, or out of
Yeah.
that number, if it's 243 is, or the two,
You'd have to add the 243 or the 143 back to the 296.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, so because the 143 went into the undesignated fund. or-
Well, no, it's going into a non-lapsing. fund,
Okay,
which is
so
not the
your
unde-
assumption is that it's going, that we'll say, yes, put it in a non-lapsing fund. And so that's inherent in here already. So, but when we were doing the projections, if we do this with the mill rate, if we cut this much of so-and-so's budget and, you know, all those moving parts with
Right.
your handy dandy Excel worksheet. Wasn't the, weren't the,
I was not projecting that
Monies.
there was a $500,000 surplus or.
No, but-
$400,000
but we did know that there was some money coming back from the board. of Ed.
Yeah,
Right.
actually, I think it was pretty close to this 296. Pretty close. I'd have to look exactly, but
From the, but wasn't all coming from the Board of Ed, though. 296,
no.
okay. But the,
Well, this 296 doesn't all come from the board of Ed.
Right.
that's my point. So the 143 that did come from the Board of Ed was part of the assumption of what the undesignated,
Actually, it wasn't because
okay.
there was some ESSER grant funding
Mhm.
that was used to offset salaries
Mhm.
that I was not given that information until the very end of the fiscal year.
Oh,
So the Board of Ed surplus was higher than I expected it to be.
Mhm.
So I think that sort of goes to what you're asking.
Mhm.
it was the high school too.
Yes,
mhm.
well, I knew what the high school was.
Yeah, they
I knew that.
We had that early, yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
I just texted the lieutenant, all 2,000 of those calls for service are.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. So, does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move to approve the request from the Board of Ed to transfer the 143,000 to a non-lapsing fund pending the town vote on the SRO.
Is that
Is that
it's
sufficient?
good, but we need to take out the pending part because I have to actually close the book, so I can't wait for the town vote. I need to
Right, I know
move the
that.
money over.
I know the auditors are coming, the state reports
All
are
right, so
Yeah, and so
friendly amendment, remove the
Was it have to be
Pending.
designated as our schools?
Yes, it should be
Yeah.
designated.
okay, so let me re-motion. I motion that $143,000 is put into a non-lapsing fund specific to the hiring of the school resource officer
Or school,
at Kent Center School.
can we not say resource, just because that's the security officer?
School resource officer?
School security officer, or just a security officer.
Well, there's a
It's not what's
difference.
gonna be in
between-
front of the town.
That's
the
not,
SRO.
I mean, what you're asking for is a resident trooper.
That's what we're asking for. We're
So-
asking to encumber, well, what we're asking for is to encumber $143,000 from our return funds
For school security?
for school security officer, you know, for. an
Yeah, but the
officer.
number would be different and perhaps
Just-
significantly
Because just
so.
like our conversation, 10 minutes ago, if it gets voted down and there's a lot of talk at the meeting, like we would be in favor of you looking into hiring a security officer, that would be $70,000 or $80,000. If that money that we encumber is allowed to be used for that also, we're moving another step out there. And I mean, I'm not trying to, put one over it. I'm just trying to make it more efficient that
I actually am not, and, frankly,
Okay, so, but your motion that was
Right.
voted on
Right.
at your board meeting said deposit into an existing non-lapsing account for the funding of the school resource officer funds totaling 143,000 from the fiscal year 21-22 KCS budgeted appropriation for education for the town. That is what your board voted on. So I think we need to stick with that.
So,
That was my friendly amendment, I guess.
okay.
I mean, it's verbatim from the first paragraph. Do you want to read it to make it official?
And
Give
a
them the
point of
paper.
clarification, Scott, if you don't, so if it gets defeated and you go back to the drawing board, is it, and Barbara can help me, that those funds will remain in that fund until
But that's what
action.
I'm worried
No,
about.
that's
Will they be
because it's
able
a
to be
school
used
res-
then?
Not first.
I think we'll have.
I think we'll
another
have to deal with
discussion.
It'd have to be another meeting or another discussion. I mean, the school resource officer is a highly qualified.
and expensive.
Yes, unfortunately,
Mhm.
asset to, and resource to have in the community. So, and that's very specific in the motion that your board voted on. So I feel that, we have to.
I
we
mean,
have
would
to
there
be
be
true
leeway
to
to
what
just
the
have a
board-
discussion at the Board of Finance instead of going to another town vote?
I don't think so, because if you're getting the impression at the town meeting that we're gonna have in the referendum, that we're gonna have, that they're in favor of it, but not at this level of funding, but they'd be in favor of a different type of security
I think there's
officer,
gonna
then
have to be
I don't
another
see where there's any problem.
And just be clear,
Having another discussion at another board level, designating the title of it.
I think unless there's a vote, frankly, in the town meeting that delegates that to us, then you're gonna have to have another vote.
no, I don't think legally, you're allowed to encumber funds without a town vote. That's all we're asking for. We're allowed to encumber 2% of our budget every year if we return more than that amount with your approval.
Yeah.
But it doesn't require a town vote. And that, once that money's encumbered, we're allowed to spend. It doesn't have to be a town vote.
Well,
So
see,
I'm
that's-
just-
Right,
okay.
the money
And
that
that's
goes in
the
that.
question.
lapsing
And that's
fund,
too
but-
clever by
but
half.
But what your
Nancy?
board passed was specific.
Yeah, no.
Yes, sir.
I think this motion is unnecessary.
Why?
Let's let it work out in a town meeting. Why do we need to encumber funds beforehand?
We're not encumbering funds, first of all.
I thought that was part of the motion.
No, it's not. It is designating that 143,000 be set into the 2% non-lapsing fund, where the the 2% non-lapsing fund is the BOE fund. And it is specifically for a school resource officer. So then the Board of Ed has the latitude after the town meeting and the town people approve of this, that the Board of Ed could then go ahead and flip the switch in conjunction with the town, because it would be a dual utilization of this resource officer to go ahead and put that process in motion. But because we close the books for the state, we're between a rock and a hard spot, because we haven't been able to have a meeting to have the discussion with the townspeople for a vote. So we're behind the 8 ball, but we're trying to accommodate to facilitate this coming to pass, if that is the townspeople's wish.
So with this motion, we're supporting the decision we previously made to move to the town meeting for a vote on this.
Yes, there's no change there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is more of an administrative thing because of the bookkeeping.
And
that-
why is, where did we get the 143,000 rather than the 187,000?
143 came from the Board of Ed.
That's the max we're allowed to encumber.
Ah,
No,
thank you.
did not encumber, set aside in the 2% non-lapsing fund. You don't encumber it until you make the commitment to the state police. There's a semantic difference. Encumber is like commit, as opposed to, or contract with somebody.
I think this is very similar to what Board of Ed did for the entryway project.
Exactly what.
Yeah, and so I think, and please cut me off, but I think we're asking to encumber the money so that it is available to be spent. And what it would have to be spent on that particular purpose.
Correct.
And it could not be spent on just anything we wanted. That's why you're agreeing,
Right,
if you do, to allow us to spend that money on the school security officer.
if the townspeople vote yes.
I think technically, it does not depend on the taxpayer voting yes. We're not gonna spend it unless it passes. We don't wanna just go ahead and do this without support. So I think technically, if you encumber the funds, we could just go ahead and spend it without a town vote. We're
Technically,
going for a town. vote.
technically, that may be true. Technically, there also may be a policy that this board has, which is that we're going to defer to the people, to the town people on this. This is why we're convening the town meeting.
Well, I don't know if there's a policy like that.
I'm saying that's what we can do as a board. We set our policy.
I don't wanna argue about this because we wanna go, but
And it's going to.
I think, yeah, it's gonna go, but I think technically what we're asking for is does not require.
So does that mean that you're going to go ahead and hire someone prior to the town meeting?
No, it does not. That's why I don't wanna confuse things.
It's okay, because it
But I'm
is
just trying to-
confusing things.
Right, because you keep telling us
There's
it's a
just-
technicality.
There's a
the bylaws.
mechanism available through the
Right.
state statute that allows the Board of Ed to
You have up to
request
2%.
that up to 2% of their
Right.
budgeted amount.
Correct.
If it's in surplus, they can request that it be set aside into a non-lapsing fund for a specific expenditure. That's all that's happening.
Yeah.
The whole, whether you get a school resource officer or a security guard, all of that, that's still going to a town meeting.
But we do have the authority to say, yes, we'll set that money aside for you,
Sure.
but we will approve flipping the switch after the town vote. We could do that.
I'm not sure.
No?
Do you have the statute in front of you?
I've had it done to me, in the town.
It's in that email.
I don't think the statute reads that way, at least I don't read it that way. but,
No.
I mean, I think the
But it's the
town vote,
financial authority, and we are the financial authority.
But I don't think, if you read it, it doesn't look like,
It doesn't mean that we're putting it in a 2% non-lapsing
No,
fund.
it
It means
doesn't
we're setting
look
it
to me
aside.
like you have the authority to deny it.
Oh, we do. We definitely do.
and that's fine. I don't wanna argue whether you can deny it or not, but I mean, I think.
Well, by the way, then you shouldn't keep telling us we're only, a technicality is keeping us from not having any authority.
Yeah, but just that's not what he's
Yeah,
saying.
I'm not
You need to
saying that.
calm down, man.
You haven't seen me
I'm
excited.
saying-
See, I am calm.
Like,
I'm saying, I think we could go just to a town vote without encumbering funds.
Yeah.
In other words, we're doing this to make it easier, I think, on Barbara.
Because
and
otherwise it
it's
goes
just more
back into the
efficient.
general fund and then another town votes to take it back out.
Yeah, it's just, the town vote will decide whether it gets spent or
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, but
It's
as long
important
as
that-
that is the case, because
That
I'm
is the
saying
case.
that we have the right to go ahead and encumber it. Well,
Right.
encumber it means you're gonna go to contract with somebody.
I don't, maybe I don't know what encumbering means, but I think encumbering means just placing.
No.
No, it does not. That's the difference, yeah. You can say set aside, put a separate fund, earmark it for, but
Okay.
Encumbering is like
Yeah.
We
reserving.
would like to do your market.
yeah, or, that kind of those synonyms, just off the top of my head. Yeah. So that's what's making me twitch.
And,
We're-
and, and
You have my word, we're not gonna contract for an SRO if it fails.
and it's necessary to do this before the vote, correct?
You don't actually have to.
No, we don't.
The money could actually all revert back to the general fund, close
Okay.
books, et cetera.
And we
And
could
then
then go
if the
ahead and,
taxpayers say that they want to do this, then there's gonna be another vote to appropriate money.
That's
So
right.
this just saves the second town vote. from
That's
happening.
Mhm.
This just is a more efficient way, in my theory, to do this funding.
So what's the board's pleasure?
Well, you've got a resolution,
Right.
obviously, and we're gonna vote on it, and I know I'm gonna frankly vote, which may not make people happy. So,
So is your motion, did
So, yeah.
you read the motion?
I mean, my motion is to place $143,000 from the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 KCA's budgeted appropriation into a non-lapsing account for the funding of the school resource officer.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I have a question with the motion, may I?
Uh-huh.
Without qualification, that number of 143,000 may be interpreted by some as saying we don't support the higher cost for a full school resource officer. Should we qualify that 143,000 because that's the limit that's available?
No, it's the limit that's allowed by the statute, the state statute. It being 2% of the Board of Ed budget.
That's correct. I understand that, but that's not part of the motion. That
no, but
motion-
it's reflected in the minutes. too.
How would you amend it, Jim?
I would just
would you amend-
include 143,000, which is the statute limit for 2% to be, my wording is horrible, I'm sorry. But I'm
No,
just
just-
saying qualify it so it's not, doesn't seem as though we're limiting money available to be spent on a school resource officer.
But the
We
minutes,
are.
and the minutes reflect the complexity. I mean, we've got it in the minutes, if not in the resolution.
Right.
That's why we did, why.
Okay,
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just simply enabling the Board of Ed to have a chunk of money already set aside to go, and then the town meeting would include the town portion of it as well, to come up to the full 180. So that would have to come out of the general fund.
Yeah,
It's gonna probably be more like 150.
yeah, because I'm not even sure we need to do that, because there'll probably be enough money in the budget next year to do a small budget transfer to cover the difference. Because we're not funding for the full fiscal year. By the time this actually happens, it's gonna be October. We're gonna
At the
already have
earliest, yeah.
143. The idea is that it's gonna be closer to 150 to 160. The difference between the 143 and the total could be a budget transfer at the end of this current fiscal year.
All right. So, anybody wish to second this motion? Jim, do you wish to second the motion?
no,
Okay. Well, all right, then I think that we're looking at it going back into the general fund. And then if the townspeople wish it, then the process will come back around.
Gee, so what you're saying is now it would be two, in theory, based on the conversation that's happening, it would be two referendums that, because there's a cost to a referendum, remember, there's a cost, you're,
But there would be a hearing,
right,
and then there would be a referendum.
right, but now because we have, it's not wrapped up into that more one efficient.
Why can't the discussion be about the resource officer and it's a dollar amount?
Yeah.
Why
You could have
does
two
that have to be?
questions at the referendum.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yeah,
I thought the dollar amount wasn't on the last one.
Well, it would have to be now. It's been-
Yeah, we'll have to come up with.
It'll just have to come out of the general fund instead.
right, exactly. The money's there, so.
And in the spirit of transparency, it is not a bad thing for the townspeople to know what we're gonna spend.
That's correct.
And that way
Yeah,
it
but
would,
they're-
it would
Just
talk to.
to be clear, we're gonna let them know either way. We're
Right.
not trying to be,
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
it's very important.
we're not trying to be. the gate.
And that would speak to Jim's concern that the 143 might be confusing to people because it's not for the full amount.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. Okay. Unless anybody else has any other ideas on this topic? No? Okay. All right, then. It'll get there. It's just gonna take some time.
Yeah, we'll see.
Is there any new business anybody has? Are there any comments from the public and invited guests?
I would like to commend you on your courage. Well done. I think you stood your grounds.
Okay. So, Jim, would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Good night, all.